Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. I'm your host, John Dehlin. It's September 19th, 2022, and we are here in part two of an epic, amazing Zimbabwean Mormon story. We're here with Daniel Spencer, also known as DanBanBam. He's a comedian on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. He also has a YouTube special on Dry Bar. Yep. And I still don't know what that means, but if you tell me it's cool, I believe you.
It's great, yeah.
Dan has 1.7 million TikTok followers. But interestingly, we're not really talking about that. We're just talking about his amazing, epic Mormon journey. Yeah. If you have not listened to part one, I encourage you. Samantha encourages you to pause right now, go back and watch part one, because in that we talked about his, grandparents and his parents being raised Mormons in Africa, even during the priesthood and temple ban on black people in Africa. And when that was lifted, how his grandparents and parents stayed Mormon as white Africans when a lot of other white Africans left the Mormon church once they allowed black people to have full status. He talked about being raised in Zimbabwe, also as a gay Mormon teenage boy, how he had sexual experiences as a gay Mormon teenage boy, which is actually quite rare from the dozens and dozens of LGBT Mormons that I've interviewed. But eventually he straightened up. He served a mission for the LDS Church in British Columbia, Vancouver. Went to BYU for a little season before his mission, and we talked about how he came clean and repented midway-ish through his mission, and how he was on the edge about whether or not he was going to get sent home early. But eventually you make assistant to the president. Is that right? Or zone leader, at least?
Zone leaders, yeah. So never got to the assistant, but was there at least a year, so.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about, so we also talked about him learning about the Gospel Topics essays on his mission, which is when the Mormon Church started to come clean about its history, learning about the real, Curse of Cain doctrine and the Lamanite dark skin doctrine in the Book of Mormon, learning about that on his mission, and starting to have cracks of a bit of a faith crisis while he was a missionary. And that's where we left off. And we are going to be now jumping into part two, where we talk about how his mission ends, and then his time at BYU, and how he became a comedian, and where his faith journey has taken him now. And we're going to be doing all that with the Samantha Shelley from Zelph on the Shelf. Hey, Sam.
Hello.
Yeah, Sam brought Daniel to me, so this wouldn't happen without you, Sammy.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks. And Samantha, she is a co-host of Zelph on the Shelf. They have a Patreon. They have a YouTube channel. They have all the channels.
Yes,
so
we have a Patreon. So important.
Yeah. Get the money, though.
Yep.
Yeah. And Samantha, you're from the country that colonized Zimbabwe. So in that sense.
Yes. So there's some crossover here.
You're kind of recolonizing Daniel right now, actually.
Oh
wow. I'm sorry. That was dark.
Wow.
That was dark. I'm trying to be funny. I'm just trying to be funny.
John,
like
you got to take risks to be funny. We get it.
Risks.
We don't shame
we
you.
always,
I'm sorry. That was bad. So write down. We have to edit that out.
It's not. Just you're fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
The audience knows who you are.
Okay. A horrible person. Is that what you mean? Who says inappropriate things? Okay. So anyway, welcome Sam, and welcome back Daniel.
Thank you.
And that was a super long intro. But so you're on your mission.
Yep.
You're having some questions. You're starting to doubt things like, recognizing how racist the church leaders have been, how racist the Book of Mormon kind of is.
Yeah.
But you've straightened up. You're not messing around.
No.
On your mission.
And that's the whole thing is like, I feel like on my mission, I just I wanted to be a good missionary, right? Because of all the work I put in to repent. I really wanted to make sure that I was good, right? I put this in an interview, and maybe I can just say this over here. I'm not sure. You guys can edit it out after the fact, but I never masturbated once on my mission.
Wow.
Period. And I've heard a lot of people say that they struggle with that. It was not a struggle for me. I wasn't which is weird because I feel like before my mission and even after that, I definitely struggled with that sort of stuff, right? Where it was like, yeah, I did want to look at porn, and yeah, I did want to masturbate, but on the mission, I felt so motivated by the experiences I had in the temple beforehand, as well as the repentance process, that I was like, I don't want to disrespect that moment for me, right? Like, it would be so stupid to, and maybe that's the wrong way to think about it, but I was like, after the mission, it's fine, but like on the mission, I can't do that yet. I can't make the mistakes that I regularly would, because I've been given this beautiful moment to kind of teach the gospel, be the Lord's missionary, and actually like preach the gospel the way it's supposed to be preached, as well as the fact that I was scared. Again, we go back to my mission president's wife's promise of like, you're not going to be a good missionary if you sin. So I was like, I'm not going back to that. I feel depressed if I do that, and that's just not who I want to be. Speaking of depression, though, what ended up happening was kind of like at the midway point, a little over the midway point, I got put with a companion. It was very weird. It was an interesting one. This is a weird story to tell, but I want to tell it because it was just like, what is going on? I can't remember what the disease was, but I had a missionary in my mission who was very prominent and had served in a very remote part of Canada. And he became my companion after a very difficult, not a difficult companionship, but a difficult companionship in that I was in a companionship with a guy who was about to finish, and in my opinion, he was like lax. How I saw it was like lax. But again, it was because I was trying to be so overly obedient that it became like, I feel like I was oppressive, almost emotionally abusive probably, in the way of like, you have to be perfect. You have to be absolutely perfect. I have to be perfect. And that translated into kind of like a bad relationship between us two. And before he left, we kind of hugged it out, and he was just like, I know there's like a human being in there. I was like, yeah, I might have messed this one up. And I felt bad. I apologized to him after. I was just like, I'm so sorry that I like wasn't more human in that transfer. It just felt terrible. And basically what ended up happening was that I like got this new companion, and I was like, I'm going to be better. I'm going to try and be like a little more like humane's the wrong word, but natural, right? Like, I'm not going to be as like hard-assed, such an asshole, basically. Anyway, he comes down to my area. We start doing a whole bunch of stuff. He goes from like remote in the middle of nowhere, Canada, to a giant city. We were in Surrey, and people are throwing up. It's like, honestly, there was a big like drug use population there. We were in like, if it can be considered that, like the ghettos of Canada, essentially, where like drug use was just prominent. It was just like drugged up white people, basically. Like, Canada was so beautiful. It was just like, this doesn't feel like a bad area. It just felt like a lot of people were doing drugs, and that was about it.
Isn't Letterkenny, is that a...
Oh yeah, Letterkenny's also, yeah, that's from Canada too. I love Letterkenny. And that's the thing, is you like meet people in rural Canada like that. It's so fun. But yeah, I could tell he was struggling, but at one point he started complaining about neck pain. And he was like, I'm having neck pain in my neck. And I was like, I'm so sorry, that sounds rough. Maybe we should call the nurse. And he calls the nurse, the mission nurse, and he's like, I can't move my neck as well as I want to. And so she's like, hand the phone to Elder Spencer. And so I'm holding the phone, and I was like, yes. And she was like, are his eyes pink? And I was like, and I literally said, as pink as like maybe someone's eyes can be pink. I was like, yeah, they're pinkish. And she was like, he has, and I can't remember what the disease is. I wish I remembered. It wasn't MS. It starts with an M. It's something. Yeah, something with the spine and nerves. And she was like, he's going to die. You have to get him to hospital like right now.
Meningitis?
Meningitis, that's it. He has meningitis. You need to get him to a hospital immediately. And I was like, I can't drive. I don't have the driver's license, which is, I never went through my mission getting a Canadian license. It was too much with my Zimbabwean driver's license. They didn't let me have it. So I was like, okay. Anyway, we get another elder, a kind of older in the mission, to take him to the prominent hospital in Vancouver, which is about an hour away. And I'm with another missionary. Eventually, we have to transfer back. We go to the hospital. He's in there, and he's like, "Can we get a blessing?" And maybe this is just too much exposure, so I'm not going to mention names. But it was just really weird. Another elder comes in, another set of companions. These zone leaders from the Vancouver area come in to help me give the blessing, and they're like going to be in a companionship with me while this guy's in the operating rooms or whatever. We start giving the blessing. The doctors walk in, and we've asked him. He's like, "Yeah, they said it's so bad. They don't know what's going to happen." The doctors come in, and they're like, "Oh, we don't know. There's nothing in the tests that show anything. Definitely not meningitis. Maybe like flu, muscle flu, like flu of the muscles." And he's like, "Oh, interesting." And they're like, "Yeah, and here's your bill." And it was like $13,000. And he was like, "Oh, who's going to pay this?" And they were like, "I don't know. We'll see, but someone has to pay it." And I think the church eventually paid that or whatever. But after that, he was like, "Yeah, when you guys gave me the blessing," which we didn't finish. He was like, "When you guys gave me the blessing, I felt the meningitis leave my body."
Beautiful.
And I'm a zone leader. So I'm like, this doesn't feel right. What? No. Okay, sure. But he only says this on the phone to the mission president. Before that, he didn't say anything. He says it to the mission president while he's on the phone because he's getting an update. It's like, "Yeah, they gave me a blessing, and I felt it leave my body. And so the doctor said that they didn't see anything on the test." And he starts telling people this, and out of nowhere, it starts going across the mission that this elder was healed miraculously by the blessing I gave him. And I was like, I did not do that. I was like, the doctor came into the office and said, "You did not have meningitis. He said you had flu, and you might have just been like overreacting." And he was like, no, it was meningitis. And suddenly the mission president starts preaching that he was healed, and the mission nurse did the right thing, and she gets brought up at like zone conferences and mission conferences, and it's like, hey, he healed him, he did this sort of stuff. And I just remember like sitting across from the elders that had been in the tri-companionship with me and being like, is this real? Did this happen? I don't think this this does not happen the way it's supposed to. And they're like, well, we don't want to like come off faithless, right? Like, this is a faith building exercise. This is something that but it was in emails. The mission president put it in like the mission email. It was crazy. And I think that was the first time I was like, there's a lot of like pretend in some circumstances. Like I was like, and that was weird because growing up in Africa, we had fake prophets come about all the time that were like
non-LDS.
Non-LDS, just random guys that were like, and I'm a prophet and I've healed people, and we'd laugh about it all the time. It'd be like, that is outrageous. And then I was like, how much do we do of that? And so that was like the first moment where I was like, oh no, someone just like edited the story, and if I say what I know about the situation, I'm going to look like I don't have faith. Right? Like I was the guy who was blessing him, and I don't believe in that. Anyway, for the following, they told him to stay off his feet for 4 weeks because he ended up getting a spinal tap, and they were like, yeah, it could leak or whatever. And he's like, and so I have to stay off my feet. Right immediately after he gets transferred from rural Canada, where he's not doing as much like contacting, and suddenly he gets transferred to an area with tons of foot traffic. People just like constantly like having to be talked to. And I understood that because I went from rural Canada to Victoria. That was like where I went through my repentance process. The way I got broken was in Victoria, where there was just tons and tons of foot traffic. And I had to learn how to adapt to city missionary work as opposed to like rural missionary work, which is very like door to door. Here and there you talk to someone, right? It was so interesting. So anyway, he's like, now we have to stay off we can't go do work for 4 weeks. So for 4 weeks, I'm sitting absolutely depressed. I just get further and further into depression and further into, Daniel, you are gay and you're a bad missionary and this is you getting punished because you were a bad companion to your last companion. And maybe like this is bad. So it's the first time I go to therapy. LDS Family Services therapist. And yeah, I just basically go through this like kind of crisis of like identity, right? Like, I think I'm a gay guy. I don't know if this is going to happen. I start talking to this LDS Family Services therapist, and he's just like, you'll be fine after your mission. It'll be okay. Like, you'll marry a woman. Same stuff that we talked about in part 1, right?
The therapist was saying that too.
Yes, yeah. Like, do you still feel like you want a temple marriage? And so, of course, I'm still like kind of lying, right? I didn't want to believe I was lying at the time, but I look back and I was like, you were still lying. You were still like not being honest with yourself, who you were. And so it started just like weighing on me. I also, in that same transfer, because once he healed, we had a zone conference, and there was a sister who was, I'm not joking, dying. Like, she had this ovarian disease where something had gone wrong with her ovaries and she was bleeding out, and she had lost like 40 pounds in like, I can't remember. It must have been 5 days. She was just vomiting everything and couldn't hold down anything. She walked in like a skeleton, like just was absolutely pale, sick. She had gone to the hospital, received treatment, but she was still so sick. And they were like, they're still deciding if they're sending her home. I don't know what was happening. I think they were like, she's going home. We just have to like wait till all this stuff is organized at that point. She comes up to me after the zone conference and was like, elders, you're my zone leaders. Would you mind giving me a blessing? I am feeling very, very sick. I was like, okay, cool. But in our mission, we were very, very segregated. We were actually testing a new, I don't know if it was like the church decided it or my mission president decided it, but we were testing out elders and sister districts.
Oh.
So elders and sisters didn't mix at all, period.
Because too many
I think
male
so.
and female sister missionaries were hooking up, maybe.
I think so, yeah, previously. And so
segregate them completely.
Segregate them entirely. And so there was sister zones, elder zones. We did not talk. You weren't allowed to talk to sisters more than, hey, here's an investigator. And even that turned into texting. Anyway, I blessed the sister because there's no members around. But I made sure to get one of the senior missionaries in there. But you weren't allowed to do that. I was just like, this girl's dying. Like, I don't have time. She needs this blessing. I'm going to give her this blessing. And the only reason I blessed her was because I asked the guy in the senior couple, the missionary couple that was sitting in, I was like, do you want to bless her? And he was like, no, you do it, elder. And again, not trying to, I'm not going to be like, why don't you want to do it? Right? I was like, I don't know if it's a repentance thing. I don't know if it's like a worthiness thing, but I guess I'm just going to do this because it's the right thing to do because she's literally dying from this ovarian, whatever it is. So I bless her. I get done, immediately call the assistants and say, hey, there was a unique situation where I blessed the sister. I'm so sorry. Or give me a call back.
I'm sorry.
They call me back. We're doing a training for the district leaders in our zone. They call me back, and every other room is being used by other zones because it was like a shared zone conference. And so I was like, I can only take this phone call here, and it's a serious enough situation that I will probably have to take this call in front of the district leaders. So I was like, we'll just pause this. I just need to explain some stuff to them. And they knew what the situation was. All the district leaders knew the sister was bad off. So, not well off. So, I just remember picking up the phone and the assistants screaming, how dare you? You have disappointed Jesus for blessing the sister. And so I'm like,
that should be a good thing.
I thought so. And so I remember just being like, wow, like this is crazy. I don't know what's happening. I hang up the phone and they were like, we're going to talk to you later. But yeah, what you did was bad. You need to repent. That's what they said. And I hung up the phone. Because of the
segregation thing?
Yeah, it was all like obedience. Like, how dare you bless a sister that's dying?
And if anyone was safe to be blessing the sister,
I know,
it was
but
you.
I made sure. I did everything in my power to, like, I was like, there's no members around that can actually bless her. I did everything in my power to make sure there was stuff in place to make sure that like there wasn't a bad situation. It wasn't just I wanted to bless the sister, so I did it. I was like, I got the senior couple. I did everything I could. I didn't interact with her more than I needed to. I just literally blessed her and went on my way.
I didn't even have feelings for her.
I'm gay. I wish I could have just told them. What motivation? Yeah, what motivation do I have? It's so weird. Anyway, I hang up the phone, and I remember for the first time, I think her name was Sister Skinner. Maybe it was something else. I can't remember. So chill. One of the most amazing sister missionaries ever, and she was just honestly like great. But I hung up the phone, and all the missionaries, I could get emotional about this, but all the district leaders were like, we know what you did in there. What they're doing to you right now is not right. But they wouldn't say that. They couldn't say that out loud to the assistants because, again, they'll look faithless, right? So I think I'm doing the right thing. I don't in their eyes because as far as they're concerned, the rules are the rules, period. They eventually called me after the fact and apologized for shouting, but they said that the sentiment was still, what we meant, what we said, essentially. And I was like, okay, whatever. I get demoted from zone leadership, and I get made a trainer, and I just remember relief. I was like, I don't have to do anything crazy. I'm in the most quiet area. One of the elders who was in that tri-companionship joins me in Vancouver, the two zone leaders in Vancouver, one of them joins me as my companion training. And so we just have the best time.
But let's just not skip over too quickly the fact that you were punished for exercising your priesthood. Like when Joseph Smith does the 13 Articles of Faith, the gift of healing is like literally one of the selling points. It's one of the value propositions of Mormonism. You were exercising your priesthood, which we're supposed to have to the exclusion of all other non-Mormons in the world. Yep. And yet you're getting in trouble for exercising it.
Yeah. And I can't speak to that.
Abusive.
I can't say like, oh yeah, I was for sure demoted. But it felt like that, right? It felt like they were like, oh no, you're going to be made a trainer. But that was always code for like, this zone leader was terrible. Like, oh, he didn't do his job right.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was just because like, yeah, my zone wasn't seeing success because I had a guy who had meningitis apparently. And I was stuck in a house for 4 weeks. And I'm sorry that I wasn't like the best zone leader. And I'm sorry I blessed a sister, but that's what it is. I'm sorry my zone isn't like popping off with numbers, but whatever, right? And so that was the weird part, was like I went through the sudden like, again, it was relief of like I moved on, but I had depression about it. I was like, I'm not a good missionary. I'm bad. And so I started having therapy sessions again over the phone, but I'm actually like processing stuff. And it's funny because the other zone leader went through the exact same thing, who got demoted with me. We both got put in the same area. And we're both just like living our best lives, doing therapy. We're in the forest every P day. Like, this is so fun. Right? I remember I had that for one transfer. And then my mission president calls me on transfer day. It's like done. Transfer day is finished. And I'm like, we can like, we're still in the forest. We're still going to do this for another transfer. I get a phone call at midnight. I'm like about to I'm like ready to sleep, and the phone vibrates, and I was like, and I knew. I was like, oh, here we go. One of us is getting transferred. We'll see. I thought it was going to be like, oh, and we're going to send your companion off. Because I was like, I messed up enough in the mission that it wasn't going to be me. And then my mission president calls me, and he's like, Elder Spencer, we're going to transfer you up to Terrace, which is like, I always used to make the joke that like God would have a sense of humor and send me to the African, to the most wintry part of Canada. And that was the furthest up you could go, was Terrace. And he was like, you're getting transferred to Terrace. And I just remember crying, like bawling my eyes out. And he was like, oh, are you just so happy that you get to go? And I was like, I can't tell him that I'm actually like really sad. Like, I don't want to go back to zone leadership. I don't want to have that responsibility if it means people are going to be like disappointed with me because I mess up, you know?
So he did call you
to a new zone leadership. Yeah.
Just in the equivalent of Siberia, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And in that zone, that's when I got the news that my best friend died. And I remember that really like affecting me. Sorry, I don't know why I apologize for getting emotional. My therapist says like I need to let my emotions out. But it was hard. It was an insane moment of just like, yeah, it was just crazy. And I just remember kind of being so scared of everything and messing up. But the nice part about where I was it was so remote that like there wasn't really a lot that could go wrong. And you couldn't really like check up on elders because they were like 4 hours away, right? So it was like you could just have phone calls and hope that everyone was behaving well, and all you could do was have numbers, and that was it. So I was like, this is kind of a low enough stress area where I can still kind of like be good, right? And I still have my therapy appointments over the phone, and I was like, this is fine. And I ended up finishing my mission off really well in that way. But I remember those experiences, that particular moment, that whole transfer in Surrey, just being a moment of like, this is hell. Like, I don't know what I just experienced, but it didn't feel good. And how I read it in the moment was I've disappointed people. But I looked back and I remember telling people, and they were like, that was bad. No, how they treated you was bad. Like, that's wrong. You should see that as wrong. And I was like, no, like, that's my mission president and my assistants. They were like inspired of God. And I was like, no, they handled the situation poorly. And so that was my first experience with like being mishandled by a leader. And that would be the first of many as I started coming out to more church leaders, right? I finished off my mission really well. I feel like I had like a baptism before I like left, and like I was like, so it was weird in Canada. If I remember correctly, my number was 27 baptisms, which didn't happen in Canada. Like people were like, oh, pop off, amazing, right? Yeah. Because I was like, and I look back, some of them were just like, we should just like baptize so we can baptize. And that was kind of how our mission was, right? We were the type of mission that was like, if you pray with someone on the street, teach them a principle, pray with them, that's a lesson. And so my first mission, that was how my first mission present was. Second mission present was more like, no, we need to like sit down and have meaningful lessons with people. And I love both of my mission presidents, and I need to clarify that because I think a lot of people think I have animosity towards the assistants or the mission presidents. I get that it was a bad situation, but I also feel like they handled me so well in their capacity, right? For what their testimonies are, whatever it is. I still think that my first mission president handled my coming out so well and like really went and batted for me in me staying. Obviously, we've analyzed the like cultural stuff, but I think he genuinely was like, no, keep this kid here because he needs this, like in some way, shape or form. At least it felt that way. Second mission president was great because he just was like a lot more caring. There was still a lot of like weird stuff where he was giving a lot of people responsibility. And that was kind of in the moment of the assistant shouting at me. He kind of like hoped that the other missionaries would do well. He helped me with my friend dying. He would call me and just check up on me and be like, is everything okay? Are you okay?
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Sorry, not to backtrack too much, but how did you get the news that your best friend had died?
My mission president just called me and was like, he was like, I don't know what the whole situation is, but your friend Sam, his name was Sam. And I was like, yeah. And he's like, he's passed away. We're going to get you in contact with your sister. She's going to explain more of it. But yeah. And then I just ended up, that was the first time I've ever cried, right? Like wailed. And maybe it was like good because I was just in a place, yeah. It was just I don't know how to explain it. It was such a shock. Because one, he had been baptized and we had been talking about like when I got back to BYU, how we would hang out, we'd go and like do stuff. And suddenly it just was all done. Like I was like, I am never gonna be able to see my friend again. And it felt unfair at the time, but I didn't want to say that. I wasn't like, oh, this feels unfair. I was just like, well, God's plan. But I really just felt cheated by the experience, right? That like my friend got baptized and I wasn't allowed to be there. And then he got to be a member for as long as he was, and I never got to see him ever again, you know? My grandfather, it was funny. My grandfather died maybe 3 months after that, and I didn't cry as hard. I loved my grandfather, but I feel like I knew that was coming, you know? He was starting to lose it. With my friend, it just caught me completely off guard, where it was just like, wow, like, where did this come from, you know? So yeah, that was just a really weird moment for me where I was just like, again, I feel like it also fed into my testimony of being like, well, I'm going to see him again. I'm going to see him again. I hope I can be as good enough to see my friend again type vibes. And then, yeah, you just kind of go through the rest of the mission. And I think that's why I worked so hard to the end was I hope I work good enough to be able to make it back to heaven. I hope I work well enough to be able to, like, again, respect the repentance process I had. And so there was just tons of moments where I was just trying so hard to be the best missionary I possibly could because I didn't want to fail or disappoint people. But I didn't realize that was feeding my depression and how bad I was going to be after the mission because I was saying I have to be absolutely perfect, pristine to be anything different than, again, just perfect, you know?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, when I got back.
How would you say your testimony was when you were done then? Pretty strong still?
Yeah, I was. Oh, yeah, definitely. But I don't think I was looking at the cracks anymore. Like, I wasn't acknowledging the racist stuff or, like, the experience I had with it. I was just completely blinded by, I have to be perfect and Mormon or else I'm going to be a servant of Satan that'll burn in hell type stuff.
Who doesn't see Sam?
Who doesn't see Sam again, yeah.
So it became very fear-based, whereas it doesn't sound like before your mission you necessarily had as much of a fear-based view of Mormonism.
No, not at all. It was all very, like, I feel like before the mission, it was very, very faithful. Very, like, people are kind, and I should be a good person, and I should do this. Post-mission, it was like, it was just or else. It was like, you can't be gay or else. And that was the thing. My exit interview, I remember with my mission president, him being like, if you bear your testimony, I think he made a promise to me where he was like, if you bear your testimony regularly, you won't give in to your natural man or something like that. I can't remember the lingo, but something along those lines, right? Where it was like, you won't have to worry about that stuff if you just bear your testimony regularly.
Oh my gosh.
And so I was like, okay, I will just go back home and I will do everything perfect and we will see how it goes. And I remember getting back and immediately, I think the mission also killed my emotional connection to people in some way, shape, or form. I didn't want to talk to my family because I was so scared of my feelings. I felt like I feel like my mission in a lot of ways taught me to just be like emotionless. Because I had to be so perfect that I didn't like think or feel anything different than anything that the church taught me. Right?
It's not healthy to lie all the time. Your brain has chemicals that it shoots into your body that say, "Stop being a liar, stop being fake, stop being phony."
Yep.
So when those chemicals, the cortisol, the adrenaline, when that's just pumping through your body all the time, because you're lying all the time to everyone about everything, you start to feel awful. Yep. So if you don't learn to shut off your feelings, you're just going to feel awful. So you just numb yourself. Yeah. However you can, right?
And that's how I felt. I felt numb. I was like, I have to be numb. Like, I was like, if I'm going to do this thing, I have to be so numb. I remember I got home and immediately I was like, I have to go to America, like, right now. And my parents were like, you don't want to stay in Zimbabwe for like a couple months and just chill with us? I was like, no. I need to get to America like right now.
Wow.
Well, also, this is a side note. I had accumulated debt from my previous full semester before my mission, and I had deferred the payment. I had put it through, and I got a confirmation that I had deferred the payment. And I came back, and BYU had not deferred it. Ooh. And so it went to national collections and accumulated more debt. And they were like, we can't really do anything about this, sorry. You're just going to have to pay off the extra however much money it accumulated. So I think it came something like $5,000-6,000, somewhere around there. So I went up from like $3,000 to $6,000 over the 2 years. And so I was like, well, I also have to just go pay off stuff. So I just used that as an excuse, right? I was like, I just have to go home. I have to go to America because that's where we make all of our money, and I need to pay that off immediately. So I come here, I start working at a call center, and again, my family, I'm working catering and at a call center, and that was the first time my sister, who, when I was 14, she caught me looking at shirtless men. She caught me looking at shirtless men on Google, and she followed that up because she actually, and she's apologized for this regularly, but she'd like blackmail me with it. She'd be like, you better go get me a drink or else I'm going to tell Mom and Dad what I saw you looking at on the computer. And she's apologized frequently. And she actually did that the night that I did this. But she was like, I'm so sorry that it happened. Are you gay? And I was like, yes, I am gay. I am gay. And yeah, that's that. And that was like a month in after I came back from a mission, 2 months in. And we built a strong connection over that, I feel like. And I love my sister. Her name's Hannah. She has been one of my biggest like supporters in that. I feel like all of my siblings have, and my parents. Coming out to my parents was so scary, just because, I mean, you couldn't tell in part one, I was scared to let my mission president even tell my dad, because again, I had grown up with my mom being very like, you need to be the perfect man. You need to be a rugby player. You need to do this stuff. I used to do all of the clubs I talked about. I do them in secret because I felt like I had to also do the stuff that my mom was telling me to do, which was like rugby and cricket and hockey, because she was just trying to meet society where she was at. Again, they were already pariahs, seen as like satanic pariahs because they were Mormons. They couldn't drink like everyone else, and they couldn't have coffee like everyone else. So therefore they weren't cool enough, or they weren't like what everyone wanted them to be, right? And so I think my mom just so desperately wanted me to be normal to protect me as well, right? Like I think it was partially for her, but a lot for me, so I wasn't like gonna get beaten up or whatever it was, right? So I eventually came out to them, and I remember them just hugging me, and we just cried, and it was a very beautiful moment of just, we love you, we care about you. My mom did say, when I did come out, she was like, and I know tons of gay guys who are married to women, happily, right? We go back to it, right? They're happily married. I will say that that's changed now, right? Obviously, she's very, like, they're very supportive, and it's been interesting to watch that progression, and maybe we'll get to that later on in the story. But yeah, just an interesting moment of, like, there was no, like, second thought, right? I also attribute this to my aunt. She's a lesbian. She took the brunt, I think, when she came out, because she came out around, like, 2009. I think she took the brunt of, like, my parents' first, like, ugh, how are we supposed to feel? And she addressed that in a way that was like, I just remember when I was 16 and visited America, she came over while we were in Utah, dropping my sisters off. She came over to my other aunt's house, and she was telling me, she was just like, okay, everyone upstairs, I need to talk to your dad, kind of vibes. Or we were just told to go upstairs. People were like, go upstairs, Dad needs to have a serious talk with Aunt Linda about something. And we knew she had come out as lesbian, but, we just didn't talk about it. And I think her and my dad just had as far as I know, a serious conversation. But that was the first moment I think my dad had been confronted with LGBTQ plus narratives in his life. I think my mom was also confronted with that. My mom had like grown up being in like show choirs and stuff. She's a singer. So she knew tons of gay guys, but I don't think she like had a personal connection to anyone LGBTQ, right? And so yeah, I think she took the brunt, and my coming out was just kind of like that. I was nervous. I was like, how are they going to react? And it was loving, and it was kind, and it was just beautiful. And I think it's unique because I feel like I know a lot of gay guys in the church that don't have that situation. And every time I tell them that story, it's like, wow, like I wish my parents would react that way. And I was like, I think it's just because I grew up in a kind of a loose household, right? R-rated movies where gay narratives. We watch Project Runway every Friday, right? My dad and mom weren't weird about gay stuff. They weren't like, oh, a gay guy's on the TV, we have to shut it off. My parents were like, there are gay people in the world and you need to accept that type vibes, right? I think they hoped that none of us were, just for the sake of protection. But I think that, or just like, yeah. But at the end of the day, they weren't weird about it, right? And then with my aunt, there was a little bit of like retraction where they were like, we don't talk to Aunt Linda for a bit. But I think that was just kind of them coming to terms with it. It wasn't like, we're not going to talk to her because she's gay. It was like, we just don't know how to feel. But the problem with that was that I was still numb. I was still like, I don't want to talk to people about this. I don't want to delve into it. And they were like, well, how do you feel? And I was like, I feel like maybe I could be bisexual. Like, yeah, I think I could get married. Like when my mom said that, oh yeah, I could do, maybe, yeah, I could see that. And it just wasn't the case. I tried so hard to date girls here and there.
At BYU.
At BYU. Oh yeah. Eventually I went back to BYU.
Okay, so this is while you were still home?
Oh no, this was all
okay.
This is all as I'm in BYU. My sister, coming out to my sisters was 2015. My two sisters.
That was the same year as the LGBT exclusion. Well, it's the same year that in the United States, same-sex marriage was legalized.
I came back and it got legalized that weekend. Yeah.
Okay.
Or I came back to America that weekend we did that. I remember going up to my aunt with my brother-in-law, and my brother-in-law being like, so how's it going? Are you excited? And my lesbian aunt was like, oh, getting married. And they were like, oh, the ring. Like, it was so fun, right? Like, very clearly like a moment. And then I came out to my parents, Christmas of 2017.
Okay, wait. You would have been out-ish when the church issued its exclusion policy in November, December 2015.
Yes, yeah.
You remember that?
I do. I remember being at the call center and people being like, did you see what happened? It was funny. Well, it's not funny. Oh, this is another one. And this was also when I was kind of confronted with stuff. So I'm working at this call center, and there's a new hire who is very obviously gay. He's got bleached hair. He's like, blah, 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 blah. But he is swearing up and down that he's straight. And I was like, oh, okay. I also have bleached hair. So I'm like, I think we both sensed it in each other, right? We were like, we're straight.
I just want to know if all gay people go, is that a thing?
I think that's just a me thing. Put my tongue out. Oh my gosh, it's so embarrassing. But anyway.
I'm trying to be funny again.
No, it's a good observation. I think
I've never heard Gerardo do that.
It's just a Daniel thing at this point. So we're working at this call center, and the guy I'm training is gay as far as I can tell. Very fashionable. Very like. We get pulled in at one point into an office. They pull in our whole team, and they're like, by the way, so-and-so has committed suicide, and you guys just have to, you can take the day off, essentially.
Was this that guy?
It was the guy, the trainee.
Oh.
And they were like, the funeral will be, and we had become good enough friends at work where it was just like, hey, talked about life, talked about everything. I can't remember. I don't know if I remember the full story because no one will really tell me. But I remember walking into the funeral and seeing like a lot of gay guys, just sitting in the chapel, and they were angry. Like it felt angry, like just absolute anger. And if I remember correctly, and trigger warning, I hope this doesn't do anything for anyone, but apparently him and another gay guy had hung themselves together because they were scared of being gay, essentially. Like they were scared to live that part of their lifestyle. And I remember, well, first of all, when they told me, I was just bawling my eyes out in work. Again, I didn't have like a crazy deep connection to him, but it was the first time I was confronted. It was the first time I was confronted with my own, like suicidality, suicidalness, because I knew that was in the back of my mind. That had come up on my mission during like the depression and therapy. I wanted to so bad. because I was just like, if I can kill myself now, then I'll go to the celestial kingdom because I'm absolutely perfect. I'm the perfect missionary, and I can be with Sam and all this stuff, right? And now I was imperfect, though, so I was scared. I was like, ugh, this is the worst. And it was the first time I had seen someone do it because of that reason, right? It wasn't because of anything else other than I have to be perfect, and I don't want to die being imperfect, and therefore I will kill myself. And so like that was just a moment where I didn't know how to handle the situation. And for the first time I wanted to do the same thing. And that would be the first of many. I'd break down and cry to my sister Hannah and Brittany, and all my siblings honestly at this point have had some sort of instance where they've had to deal with Daniel in that capacity, because for years and years, like you said, it's just me lying. It's just me constantly going on dates and being disappointed that I can't be what a girl wants me to be, can't be what a church wants me to be, can't be anything other than who I am, because I can't date a girl because it feels so uncomfortable, and I hate it. I hated it. Girls would try to kiss and I would hate it, and then I'd feel bad because I couldn't act the appropriate way, and I would just go into depression and be utterly confused as to what I was supposed to do, right? I'd pray to God and say, like, I'm trying, like I'm doing everything. I don't know why you can't like bless me with, sorry, that was a horrible, bless me with an erection for a girl, or bless me with like some sort of attraction to women, or bless me with anything, because I'm desperate. And so eventually
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So,
yeah, sorry, I'm just talking.
That's my favorite type of Mormon story, when the person just goes, and people love that. So don't apologize again for having emotions or for sharing your stories. It's great. I always have to pause and ask this question because it's so, I don't want to say infuriating, but it is infuriating to me if I'm being honest. So between 2008 and a year or two ago, maybe 3, there was this building narrative where you just see all these LGBT Mormon suicides piling up. You'd see the obituaries in the Salt Lake Tribune and the Deseret News, eventually culminating in Mama Dragons making a big issue of this, and the Believer documentary, and Tyler Glenn and Dan Reynolds and Imagine Dragons. And it was just like the suicide rate in Utah is like triple the national average. Yeah. And it's a huge percentage of that are just gay Mormon men who don't want to live anymore. In the past few years, we've seen the Mormon Church come up with research, and for those who aren't watching, I'm doing air quotes, where it's like, oh no, it's the altitude. It's Rocky Mountain region. It's not. No, in fact, we've studied and found out that gay Utahns raised Mormon do better than gay Utahns not raised Mormon. So ergo, the Mormon Church is actually good for gay people. Research that basically does two things. It tries to blame suicide on anything but the LGBT Mormon experience. Yeah. And it certainly tries to downplay the church's fault as being a major contributing factor to the LGBT Mormon death by suicide crisis. Is there anything you want to say about all those efforts to try and use statistics to say, oh, it's not the Mormon and gay thing that's causing that. It's the altitude.
Yeah. If you actually, it frustrates me to no end, because that is a question that I got all the time. People are like, oh, well, how do you feel about the suicide rate? And it's like, the only way I feel is angry. That's the only way you should feel about that. The other thing is, if they were confident enough, they would actually just ask the question. The problem and issue is that they've also created a culture where even if they were to ask the question to parents and teens in the Mormon faith, they wouldn't answer honestly. I'm a testament to that. Like, my life was a lie until 2 years ago. I don't know how else to explain it other than just saying, you don't know what it's like to live completely dishonestly, because you have to hide away so much of yourself because you're so scared of what your parents or what your church leaders will think. The fact that I just saw the other day on a video of your guys' that they put the asterisks next to people's names because they don't want you to get a calling because you're gay.
With children.
With children. Oh, okay. And see, and that's just, it's so absolutely insane that the church has these programs to monitor and be able to, I don't know, in some way limit people from being themselves entirely or just owning themselves. And now they want to kind of, in any way, shape, or form, distance themselves from those narratives when there are so many people that have come forward and said, no, I've lived that way. I know what it feels like to be suicidal. I know why. The logic, like, I don't know. The way I've dealt with it, right, is just coming forward and saying, I was sick and tired at a certain point of saying, I want to die because I want to be perfect, right? Like
and
that is such,
change.
and you can't change, right? Like,
no matter how hard you try.
Yeah. Well, and that was the thing. The church narrative, I think it came with the change of the church narrative from gays are an abomination. I don't want to say like the statistics changed, but just like, I think it might have exacerbated it a little bit where it was like, well, being gay isn't a sin. It's if you do it. Because then suddenly it became, oh, if I do anything gay, I am an abomination. I am perverted. I am bad in any way, shape, or form. And then you had to fight yourself on that and constantly go back and forth and say, I have to be anything but that. And so, yeah, it's just, it frustrates me to no end to know that there are people out there, especially within the church. And it's something that I still struggle with, even within my own family, because I feel like there are so many beautiful and wonderful Mormons who do care about their LGBTQ siblings, children, just relatives or friends that want to be able to like support them in those situations. But the problem is that they can't, the church refuses to go back on doctrine because they're afraid that they're going to look wrong the same way that they looked wrong with black people in the priesthood.
Or polygamy.
Or polygamy, because they can't explain it away. They can't say, hey, these guys that we believe talk to God were wrong about gay people, and saying like, hey, maybe gay people deserve to be treated equally is so weird, because that's all we wanted. That's all I want, is to be able to say, I just want equality. I don't want anything else. It's the fact that you have literally killed us. You've you have pushed us to the point where we have to kill ourselves to send a message, and you're not even hearing the message, right? Like, how many more people have to do that before you're like, hey, maybe this is something that we need to acknowledge as a problem, instead of just like, well, maybe it's the altitude. Fuck the altitude. Ask the question directly, and don't be cowards, because that's the problem. The church is a cowardice organization that wants to avoid the questions that they need to be asking, right? I don't like it. I hate it. I hate people that try to avoid the question. Ask people the direct question. Ask your friends and family members that are gay how they feel about it, and they will tell you the exact same thing. It's not the altitude. It's literally within us. We want to be gay, so let people be gay. Stop trying to be, I don't know, stupid. That's the only way, idiotic is the only way to describe it. That was a really long answer, but I hate it.
I think that was perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry you have to, it's got to be a little bit.
No, but it's directly a part of my story, right? Like, yeah. I have had so many friends. That isn't even the first friend that did that. I've had multiple friends commit suicide who didn't want to come out. I'm pretty sure they were gay. I didn't know for sure, right? But there's gaydar. You feel it from each other. And the amount of friends that I had commit suicide, and then I would go.
At BYU?
At BYU, yeah. I can't mention names.
Yeah, of course.
But.
Because you don't hear a lot. I mean, it takes like a student jumping off the highest floor of the Tanner building in front of other students.
Yep.
To like ever hear about a BYU death by suicide.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's got to be in front of everybody in a public building, and then you'll hear about it.
And then, yeah. Well, that was the thing. It felt like it was dusted under the rug, all of the suicides. And it was all guys. It was all men in my ward. right? You'd go to a ward, suddenly a guy would disappear. What happened to him? Oh, he committed suicide. But don't tell anyone. We don't talk about that. Don't tell it. Don't say it out loud. And it's like, what? Why? Why are we not doing this? And that was just the other thing. It's like the church also wants to avoid conversations about depression in general, right? Because that's also something they can't explain away. There's such a demand for perfection from people. And in some missions, there's people that are like lax and they're like, yeah, my mission was fine. But in some ways, you're cultivating a culture where people think they need to be absolutely so perfect to the point where they can't be human and normal. And I'll go back to my example with my companion that I had to apologize to. Like, at a certain point, it becomes inhumane to be so perfect and to demand that of people. And if you aren't trying to relate or at least understand where people are coming from, then you are literally doing Satan's work of making sure that people commit suicide and don't live their lives to the fullest as a Christian. That's just you, right? And if you're not doing that regularly and saying, how can I help this person in general? That's not Christ-like, right? That's not Christ-like love. That's you trying to be Satan. Hey, we have to be absolutely perfect or else God is not going to love you type vibes.
I maybe have mentioned this before, but it just blows me away. Like even a modern day corporation, like one bad bottle of aspirin, they stop the presses, recall all the aspirin, and it's like, we'll figure it out, but we'll destroy everything we've made and start over if we need to, because we're just not going to have an unsafe product.
Yeah.
A religion can find out that thousands or tens of thousands of its own members are dying by self-inflicted wounds. Yeah. And they're just like, it's not us. It's the elevation. It's wickedness. Yeah. But it's just, they keep going. And you'd think it would take one, maybe five.
Yep.
Maybe five.
Yep.
But thousands?
Yeah. It's insane.
I don't mean to get too upset, but
no,
it's weird, and it's not a corporation.
It's not.
It's not. Well, it is a corporation.
Yeah, I was gonna say it is.
But I mean, it doesn't present as a corporation. It presents not just as a church. It presents as Jesus's one true church.
Yeah.
So for it to be so calloused and disregarding of a literal death epidemic,
yeah,
it boggles the mind.
Yeah, and they have the money to do all the research they need to do.
Just a few $100 billion.
Yep.
Yeah.
To be able to actually do that. That's another thing that frustrates me to no end.
I was going to make that point. Twice a year, the church does massive social studies surveys of its own members. And we've seen it. It's like, do you listen to podcasts? Do you want women to have the priesthood? Do you read your scriptures daily? They could say, are you gay?
Yep.
And do you want to die
mm-hmm.
by being gay in this church? They could ask that.
Yep.
They changed the temple ceremony because of a market research study.
Yeah.
This feels bigger than that.
Yeah. So why wouldn't we see that every single time the church issues a market research membership survey? Are you gay or lesbian or bisexual or transgender? And does that make you want to die?
Yep.
But they don't even ask that question.
And then on top of that, they villainize people for leaving the church because the people are upset with the church's homophobia, and they talk about it as if it's like you're just following social trends, as if it's something as small as that. You know what I mean? It's like thousands of people are killing themselves because of your doctrines and teachings. But you reduce people leaving over that to something like, oh, they're just following, the winds of trends, as if it's just a fad thing.
And that's the thing is I feel like, I can't speak to staying in the church now, but I definitely know that I am happier outside of it, right? I know that as soon as I started actually being myself, suddenly, I had to go through kind of an identity crisis of if I'm not the perfect Mormon guy, then who am I? But I know that once I came out of that, I suddenly became happier. I wanted to address things that I had never addressed before. I wanted to start being, again, true to myself. And that has come with its own challenges, and that's come with its own, learning moments or even depressive episodes. But nothing as crazy or as bad as what Mormonism had done to me. Like, I have not been even as close to depressed as what I was at BYU, trying to be the perfect Mormon in the closet, right? Like, that was just such a weird culture to be able to try and like, or just like a weird character to cultivate, right? Because it was performance art. It was like, I have to be a straight guy who does this, and ticks all these boxes, as opposed to just like, well, just be a good human being and love everybody, care about everyone, which is exactly what Jesus taught, right? And that's what baffles me. It baffles me that we have to have all these weird additions. And it's just because, as you said, the history is so extensive in homophobia and kind of how they've cultivated this weird narrative around like being an organization and having all this money, having all this stuff, and not actually trying to address the problems and issues that they actually have, but instead just focusing on, well, like, hey, we've got some good podcasts for you guys if you need them, and we also are going to change the temple ceremony every now and then. And it's like, no, that's not a good enough excuse anymore. Like, we want to know why God didn't let black people have the priesthood. We want to know why gay people aren't allowed to be included in this plan that you have, when especially, like, we're doing nothing to prevent that. Well, you're not, like, marrying women. Okay, but we've shown that that's not a good thing, right? Or is it just the altitude again? You know? It's so stupid to try and make those, like, weird comparisons. So
you're, what, your sophomore year at BYU when you come out as gay to everyone?
Not to everyone, it was slowly. I mean, like, I came out to each sibling younger than me when they came back from their missions. I immediately, like, the moment they arrived, we'd go back to, like, my sister's house, and I'd be like, hey, by the way, I'm gay. And they'd be like, okay, cool. Again, no, like, real negative reaction to it. It was all very positive. But yeah, around, like, 2017, 2018, that was when I started coming out to my family, and then I officially came out. Because all in and amongst this, I became a Mormon memer. I started making a meme account at BYU around like 2017. One, because I felt like I wanted to get a lot of my frustrations out. I was like, I feel like there's better jokes to be made than just like what regular Mormon memers were doing at the time. There was some funny ones, but it was like, okay, but there's a better joke here. There's a better joke about, like, I don't know, women in the priesthood, or like Emma Smith, or like Joseph Smith, or Brigham Young wanting multiple wives, or like any kind of topic. It felt like very like surface level. They weren't delving. And I was like, I want to delve.
Was this through Imager? Was this through?
This was through Instagram.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Do you tell what your account was? Or
it was called Provo Ho Life.
Provo what?
Provo Ho Life.
Spell it.
PROVOHOELIFE.
Okay.
Provo Ho Life.
And does that still exist, or?
No, it got deleted during the BLM protests, actually. Because what I tried to use it was interesting. It functioned as a meme account, but also as like a discussion board. I would let people anonymously submit discussion topics about stuff like things that I thought were culturally weird about Mormonism. Like, for instance, the perfection and body stuff. So I'd ask people, would you date a girl that was plus size? And people would submit anonymously, and they'd submit and debate almost through DMs. Boom, 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 boom. And so I did one where it was like, would you have a gay roommate? Like, would you be okay with having a gay roommate? And people would be like, no. Oh, I hate that. Oh, that's the weirdest thing. So I got a couple count violations, but then the BLM protests came through, and we started having a discussion, and this guy submitted this horribly racist opinion, and I put it up for people to see. He basically kind of just went on a racist rant about, like, this is typically how black people act, and blah, 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 blah. And I kept it anonymous. He honestly, he had like an alt account, it felt like, and maybe it was just a troll, but I put it on there, and it got permanently deleted for hate speech, which, valid. I don't regret that. I don't like, oh, this is the worst. But at the same time, it was a moment I think people needed to see, because it was like, there are still racist people. There are still homophobic and very homophobic people, because I don't think people acknowledge that in the church. I think people think like me, and that's it, period. And it's like, no. The church, just like the world, is full of diverse opinions. The problem and issue is that we don't confront our stuff. We don't talk about it. We just sit back and expect everyone to love each other and not talk about the controversial issues. Like, hey, there's a whole bunch of teens committing suicide in our community. Why are we not talking about that? They just want to sit back and do it. I did a poll, I did a whole discussion board about the suicidal teen epidemic, essentially, in LDS communities. And people, the amount of opinions that were like, well, they can't prove that. They can't do that. Oh, well, the church doesn't, there's no actual research to back that. And it's like, okay, but why is there no research? What has been preventing that research from being done? Have people been paid to not do that research? Because it feels like a good enough reason to do the research in the first place. So why the hell are we not seeing any studies from anyone? You'd think that GLAAD would do it, or something like that. Or maybe people have been doing the research and have been blocked and or can't get the accurate numbers because, guess what, LDS members don't want to say, yeah, maybe my teen is gay, or they don't want to admit, or at least teens don't want to admit, in the same way that I would never have admitted to being homosexual when I was 16, right? So stuff like that, where it's just like, you only can do so much with how much the church culture has blocked being able to get those answers from people. And so like, that's how I wanted my meme account to work. I wanted it to be a conversation piece, essentially.
Man, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but like, if you think about how much money and effort the church put in to helping Proposition 8 win versus how potentially no money the church put in to solving the LGBT suicide crisis within Mormonism.
Yeah.
That's a dark thought.
Yeah. I have so many gay friends that were like, oh yeah, I remember protesting Prop 8. Like, I remember being on the streets, and now look at me, I'm gay, doing this sort of stuff. And I was like, it's crazy that for a lot of those people, that was a moment in their memory that they had to be like, no, we hate gay people. And it just fed into their depression and their like anxiety about the whole situation. Like, if anything, it exacerbated their depression about it, you know? Mm-hmm. It sucks. It's the worst thing possible.
What's it like being a gay student at BYU?
That's a funny question, because I feel like there's part of me that honestly, after going to BYU and being on my mission, thinks that people are more queer than they want to let off, right? I think a lot more guys, especially after serving missions, are more sexually motivated to test and experiment than they want to tell people, right? I had a lot of interesting queer moments with roommates who would, I don't know how far I can go. Had a few cuddle sessions with some guys in garments, right? Had we had moments where guys would like come and like hug you from behind, and they were like, I just love you. You're such a good roommate. And you're like, this doesn't feel great, right? Like, stuff like that is always just was so weird to me, because I was like, these dudes want to express, I think, gaily. And it doesn't even have to be as far as like, I want to kiss a guy or I want to have sex with a guy. But I think we're all naturally connected as human beings to wanting to love each other and hold each other and tell people or each other intimate things. But the problem is that the church has created this culture of manhood needs to look like this, womanhood needs to look like this, women are sensitive little baby things that can't like commit sins and they can't do anything, and men are the protectors and they can't go outside of that. They have to be these men, these workers who constantly work for the money, right? Like, there's just all these weird narratives around like particularly gender and sexuality that are so weird. And I think it makes BYU and attending BYU, especially as a gay person, so intriguing, because you just have to watch it happen. Like, I had a lot of girlfriends. Like, all of my friends were pretty much girls at BYU. I couldn't like really hang out with the bros. I had a few like friend groups that were dudes, but I was never like really like good at being a part of the bro groups. I'd be like, yeah, this is crazy. Also, like, straight men are so gay. Like, they just want to get naked in front of each other all the time. I was like, you guys aren't even drunk. Like, you don't have the excuse of like alcohol in this situation. Like, and you're just wanting to get naked? Okay, cool. And that was the other thing. I think I also learned like that I don't know. I always kind of thought of myself as a sexual monster when I was growing up, right? Like gay people can't control their sexuality. Gay people are so like sexually motivated. And I was like, these guys are getting naked in front of me. I feel nothing. Like, I do not feel attracted to these men. If anything, I feel less attracted to these men because they are being too gay. Like, it was like this weird, like, addressing of just like years and years of like, you're an abomination. You're going to have a boner in front of everyone every time a man pulls out his penis, right? It was like, oh, I have control over these thoughts and feelings. And my desire for intimacy was much, much stronger than anything else, right? Like, I just wanted to find people that I connected with emotionally. And I would say that I'm like demisexual gay, right? Like, I connect emotionally to a lot of people. And that's how I like become attracted to people in general. But I think that was a desire for a lot of people at BYU. I think a lot of people just wanted to tell me how they thought and felt and wanted to be. And I think I was like this weird caveat of like, or like a place where people felt like they could open up a little bit. And it was just because I felt that I wanted to tell people a lot of stuff, but I couldn't, you know? And so I ended up being just like this, just kind of this like, I don't know, talking board. I don't know what you'd call me. Honestly, a therapist. There we go. We'll go with that. For a lot of people. And it was just interesting. And then I think that's what it translated into like the discussion pieces on the meme account. Because I felt like I had all these friends that were dealing with so much. I had girlfriends who were like, men don't want to date me because I'm slightly above the average weight. Or black friends at BYU, particularly my African friends, would be like, girls don't want to date me because I'm black. Or if they do date me, they like fetishize me and tell me that like they love my dark skin, or I'm just like a box to tick, like I kissed a black guy, right? It was like this weird moment of like, oh, there are so many bigger problems than just me being gay. And I want to address all of that. And I want to make memes about that. And I want to like have people talk about that at BYU. And my hope is that I did something for that, you know? I hope that I like created some sort of conversation. Even now when I'm making my BYU interviews, you have people, I made the porn or die video the other day. And
explain what that is.
I went to BYU and asked BYU students if they would rather die a horrible and excruciating death or watch a porn video, a singular porn video. And actually the majority, if you count it, said I would rather die than watch a porn video. Now we know that those students probably have watched porn.
Probably watched it earlier that day.
Yes, exactly. And it was funny. It was mostly men. All the women were like, oh, porn, right? most of the women were like, yeah, porn. All the guys were like, oh, I'd die. Oh, yeah, I'd rather die. And so it's just like, you can't be yourself. You can't talk about yourself in the right way. I don't know. You can't just be honest with yourself as well. But a lot of people were like, well, I got like DMs from particularly my friends that are still members being like, was your goal to make us look like a cult with that video? Why did you do that? Why would you want to make us look bad? I was like, I'm not trying to make anyone look bad. I have no malicious intent when I'm making videos like that. It's a funny question that I think even as members of the church, you can take into account like, hey, this is a stupid answer. And this feels like there's an obvious choice and there's a less obvious choice. And clearly the obvious choice isn't in the majority. And it's crazy that at BYU, we don't address it that way. It's crazy. And then they want to come forward and say, we don't have a suicidal problem in our community. And it's like, okay, these kids just said they want to die, then be absolutely perfect. Should we address that? Can that start the research on maybe why there's such a high suicide rate in Mormon communities? Because that feels like a moment where you can do that. And that's what I want to do. I've had these questions my whole life. And as a comedian, I want to address it in a funny and accessible way, but it's also starting the conversation. And that's all it's about for me. I don't want to go in and be like, I'm going to absolutely disprove the entire church. And if a video like that is doing that for the church, maybe the church isn't that great, right? Like maybe you don't have a super strong foundation in the first place. For me, I want to make funny videos that make people think and feel in the exact same way that I would do that at BYU. I would do that at any other school that has a weird cultural problem, right? But it just so happens that I'm at BYU. I'm currently in the place where BYU is. And so Daniel's going to go and film some funny videos and see what he can get out of that particular school.
I think it's cool that you were doing sort of man on the street, on location videos at BYU, even before the Black Menaces. And they're awesome. But
I love
that's kind of cool. Yeah.
I love Black Menaces to no end. Like
Yeah.
what I love about Black Menaces is that they took it a step further. I mean, I did the swearing video for sure beforehand. I did the swearing video. I also did one where I was like, finish the lyrics. And that was right before the pandemic. So we didn't really get a chance to really delve into it until, you know, kind of after, as the pandemic has kind of slowed down. But what I loved about Black Menaces, they just went in being like, we're just going to ask the serious questions. Because that's, again, it's just asking people questions and seeing their reaction be like absolutely heinous and insane. Like, you're like, I don't know what I'm watching, but I'm watching people be stupid. Like, that's all it is. And so I think that what I love about the Black Menaces and what I love about doing my stuff is that members of the church get to see members of the church act differently than what they thought. Because they, again, I think we all think that we're an amalgamation, that we're all thinking the exact same way, and there can't be other people that think differently. We are all Christ-like. We all care about each other. And it's like, no, there are still a lot of racist people. There are still a lot of homophobic people. There are still a lot of people that think that polygamy is okay, right? And that's something that needs to be addressed. We have to address it as a community because it's important. And if we don't, then, like, what's the point of literally being a part of a church that preaches those doctrines? If they're told to be kind and Christ-like, then be kind and Christ-like and help people live their best lives, do the research, ask people deeper questions than just like, how are you today, sister so-and-so, brother so-and-so? That's so nice. Anyway, I'm going to continue on my day. Ask people real questions about their faith. Ask them about their testimony, but beyond, do you believe in the Book of Mormon? Delve into their testimonies a little bit so that you can understand if your community is worth something supporting. Because right now, I think a lot of people from watching Black Menaces videos or anything like that think it's like they're attacking us. They're trying to show TikTok that we're all these bad people. And it's like, no, we're just showing you the flaws so that you can fix them. I think a lot of my friends, they like to say, or at least the ones that are staying in, and I've had deep conversations with these friends, so I hope they don't take offense to this, but I have a lot of friends that are like, we want to stay in the church so that we can fix it. And it's like, okay, then fix it, right? If you're going to stay, address the stuff that needs to be addressed. Don't be like, hey, we'll just kind of do it in a passive way. We're just going to do it. The only way it's going to change is if you start confronting it and demanding change from the leaders up top and saying, we want research, we want doctrinal changes, or at least answers. What frustrates me the most about the church is that I grew up being taught, and I don't know if this is actual doctrine, so maybe you can correct this, John, but I was taught my whole life that the apostles every week talked to Jesus in the temple room. That was something I learned on my mission. And that was another
the
way.
value proposition. They're special witnesses of Christ.
Yeah.
They're ordained as prophets, seers, and revelators. They take on the additional title of special witnesses of Christ. And we aired today a 2-part interview with the grandson of Joseph B. Wirthlin, Mormon apostle.
Yeah.
And that was the number one question. He, as the grandson of an apostle God, is like, hey, does your grandpa really talk to Jesus?
Yeah.
Because everyone thinks he does. He get this. Can you guess whether he ever asked his grandpa whether he actually did?
Probably not.
Never.
Too scared.
So think about this. It's like the number one thing that everyone thinks. It's not too scared. There was just a culture where you don't.
Yeah.
You just don't.
It would be seen as irreverent to ask.
Yeah, it's just a taboo. And so it's the core value proposition of being a Mormon apostle. It's what everyone's asking. It's what you want to know. It's your grandpa, and you never ask the question. It's so weird.
So weird.
But then I asked him, what's your best guess as to what your grandpa would say if you asked him directly if he had seen an apostle? And Joseph B. Wirthlin apparently was one of the cool ones because his opinion was, he would have said no.
Yeah.
Nice.
I wish. But that's my whole thing is I just wish, if we're going to keep going with this narrative of these guys talk to God.
Yeah.
There are answers that God can give.
Yeah.
And it's not about I demand it of God. Because I think that also comes in the argument of people being like, well, we can't demand answers from God. And it's like, okay, but I'm pretty sure God wants to know why all the teens are committing suicide in the church. I'm pretty sure that's something you can ask God about. Hey, God, why does this keep happening? And I'm pretty sure God isn't going to be like, it's the altitude, guys. Hey, it's the mountains. Oh, we live in so many mountains. Oh, crazy.
Let me ask you this. What was it? So, okay, when I was going to BYU, there were these rumors, and this is more like what I heard about BYU after I left, because I ran in very orthodox.
Yeah.
I ran in almost no circles. It was like, get straight A's, be a TA, try and find a wife. That was my life, right?
Yeah.
Occasionally do intramural sports. Like that was my life at BYU. But then later I heard that like there were gay people at BYU, and I'm like, really? There were gay people? And then you hear that they had to do really creative things to meet each other.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's the type of stuff that I don't want to mischaracterize, but like it's like in bathrooms and in truck stops. And this was pre like Craigslist or whatever, where they had to find ways to meet each other and to find intimacy or connection.
Yeah.
So did you just kind of shut that all part of yourself down? And I also don't want you to make it dangerous for anyone else.
No, I'm not.
So I don't even know how to ask this question in an appropriate way. So just whatever you feel safe and comfortable saying about like being a gay BYU student when you probably are looking for a little bit of love, like every other student at the university, right? Yeah. That's like the number one thing they're all doing is like trying to find love.
Yeah.
Right? What's that like for you?
It was very scary. It was scary. What I think I came into BYU in the age of like apps.
Tinders, right?
Yeah, Tinder. Well, we have Grindr, right? So a lot of guys would just stay secret. I downloaded Grindr a couple times, and I just talked to guys about their testimonies and stuff like that. I'd be like, hey, like, is this something, you know, I'd be lying if I didn't say like, yeah, I definitely downloaded Grindr, had a few conversations. A lot of guys would send me like nudes, and they'd be like, now you. And I'd be like, and this is where I deleted, because I was so scared. I was so afraid of like being found out.
These are fellow BYU students?
Maybe. I mean, a few of them probably, yeah. I never went far enough in conversation. To be honest with you, I'd download Grindr for like 10 minutes and I'd talk, and I just couldn't bring myself to like do anything with anyone. Like I was so afraid. Like I was like, what can happen? What could go wrong? I remember one summer, I downloaded Tinder for the first time, and I was like, I'm going to leave it for a week. I'll see what happens. And I did. And I honestly I said I was going to leave it for a week. I left it for like a day, and then I deleted it because I was like, I'm too nervous. Like I've heard horror stories about people being kicked out. And essentially what ended up happening was that my sister's friends tried to like out me, or like they kind of outed me. They were like, oh, we heard that Daniel's on Tinder. And I think it was less of coming from a place of like, oh, he's gay, so you need to fix that. It was like also protectionist, where it was like, hey, Daniel needs to not be on Tinder. Like, don't let Daniel be on Tinder. So there's part of me that like is frustrated that they would like even try and do that with like my sister. But there's also part of me that's like, I think they were also kind of looking out for me in a little way, like a little bit of a way, because BYU has a horrible history of treating LGBTQ plus students horribly. And that was shown, one of the major reasons I dropped out of BYU was because of that weird flip they did right as the pandemic hit.
Talk about that.
Oh, it was crazy. So basically what happened is that in the honor code, you commit to not doing any homosexual acts, I guess. And if I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys might know better, but from what I understand, they in secret removed that kind of, I don't know, the actual like section of homosexual acts. They removed it entirely, so it just was kind of like open. And I don't know how it was revealed. I don't know if they like released a press. It just got out.
You almost get the sense that like lawyers said, if you explicitly prohibit, quote, homosexual behavior, you might be liable for some discrimination stuff later.
Exactly. So and it was right around that point, right? Yeah. There was a whole bunch of stuff about like the Big Ten wanting us in. It was around that moment. There was that moment of like football leagues. the scientific community had been like they were like, we're going to deny BYU's credentials or BYU professors' credentials, accreditation if they they discriminate. And so I think they had to, in some way, shape, or form, remove the homophobic language from the honor code.
But then they also probably didn't want a bunch of BYU kids acting gay. And so, but they removed it and someone found out.
And so all the gay kids start tweeting about it. Boop, 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 boop.
They thought what?
Provo Twitter was like, hey, gay people, we're allowed to be gay on BYU campus. Who's happy? And so we all, a whole bunch of students went to the honor code office and they were like, hey, so we saw the languages removed from the honor code. Does that mean we're allowed to like be gay? And they were like, I guess, yeah. So, right. So suddenly BYU students are kissing the same gender on campus. We're celebrating. And it was a week of celebration. Just absolutely rejoicing in it.
And you were there at the time.
Still attending. It was my final semester, second to last semester. I honestly, again, horrible grades because of depression. So I'm not going to attribute it to just that, right? Like I understand that like I wasn't like the best student, but I was like, I'm going to finish strong. We'll see how it goes. But at this point, I'm also popping off on TikTok. Like my TikTok has gone over 1 million followers at this point. People are like, the vibe check videos had just started being successful. I just released a swearing video on BYU campus.
Had you done Provo's Most Eligible yet?
I'd done Provo's Most Eligible.
And it had come out.
And I'm out at this point. I am a prominent gay in the Mormon community at BYU. People are like, this is a BYU gay, one of the BYU gays, right? And so it comes out and people are like,
so weird. One of the gays.
One of the gays. But it was, I felt like a lot of people were like, and how do you feel? And I was like, I feel great. I feel the exact same way that all the other gay students. And I felt like, and this is my honest truth, I don't feel like I was being very real to myself. I feel like there were so many other kids at BYU that were so much more themselves and queer in the right kind of ways. And I don't want to say that in the right way because that makes it sound like there's a particular way to act. I just feel like they were more real. And people were coming to me for like answers. And I was just like, I don't have the answer. But I know that I am loving the energy from the queer community on campus. And we're all celebrating. I remember that weekend, I did a comedy show. And then they had like parties back to back every night. And we had a giant gay party where everyone was like kissing. And people were like, make sure you kiss the same gender. And like dance with someone who's the same gender and all this sort of stuff. It was wonderful. Just beautiful. And that was the first moment I feel like I've said this before on a couple other podcasts, but I had experienced love, like genuine love from a community, right? Like it was like, this is so beautiful. Like, this is like a wonderful moment for gay people at BYU because we get to be ourselves. Like, there's no holding back. There's nothing like, again, it's equality. Straight students are allowed to date. We're allowed to date, period. That's equality. That's it. That's all we wanted. We're not trying to have sex in front of you, right? Because that's all straight people care about is like, well, just don't have sex. Don't hit on me. Don't have sex in front of me, right? But we suddenly had moments where we were like, oh, yeah, we get to do the exact same thing that the straights do.
Hold hands,
kiss occasionally, go on dates, right?
Yeah.
We all signed the same honor code, right? We know that we're not allowed to have sex, but hey, we're allowed to at least like do the stuff that other kids get to do. And it was a beautiful moment. And then a week later, they reversed it. And I remember the reversal because I was in a statistics class and suddenly my phone starts buzzing with notifications and people are like, well, tell us how you feel. You see now? And over that weekend, I had also done a set and filmed it, a set about how gay straight people were. Like I was like, I am so angry at these people that are so angry about BYU reversing the stuff that I want to do a set. And I was like, we're all a little gay. Like, you can't deny that you're a little gay in some way, shape, or form. That's online. You can look that up. But I remember writing that set just from the heart and just being so frustrated. And once I got it out, I saw like people were like so happy with it. I was like, yes, this is wonderful. But out of nowhere, that like meant nothing because BYU reversed the entire policy. And so it was like, and they didn't even reverse it. They still, I think for legal reasons, kept the lingo out.
They did.
But guess what? Hey, you can still be punished for being homosexual at BYU.
It's just not it's just not written anymore.
Just not written in. Yeah. So what am I agreeing to in the honor code if I am not agreeing to that, right? So stupid. Anyway, I remember coming out of the statistics class and being so angry and frustrated and just seeing all of the queer people that I had now become friends with. Because we all kind of came out at that point. I had already come out like publicly, but I didn't know any other gay people. And then suddenly all the gay people were like, yeah, we're all gay, right?
Because
Like,
that's what they'll do.
Right? But I had met other gay people and it was so beautiful, just queer people in general. And it was wonderful. And then it was suddenly taken away from us. And I remember crying because I was like, and again, as you have seen on this podcast, I'm not an emotional person. I don't let out emotions very easily. It's hard for me to like even get emotions out. But I remember bawling, and I was walking through to the Wilkinson Center like courtyard area. And as I'm walking through, there's a crowd of people standing on the outskirts of protesters. And all the gay students that I have been partying that whole weekend with are protesting right on the steps. And then there's like a gap, and then there's like all the BYU students. And I'm walking through that crowd, and they're like, oh, these gay people. Oh my gosh, they're being so over the top. Oh, you don't even need to protest. What's wrong with these people? And in that moment, I just realized like how deep the hate was. Like I was like, I have tried, because my coming out on my like meme account, my coming out after Pro was most eligible, stuff like that was to try and be like, hey, there's gay people among you. Like there's queer people all around you, and you need to be like aware of that. Like, again, I hated being a conversation piece, but I felt like I needed to be, because it was like, here we are, like you've just taken away the one opportunity we have for equality, and we're standing in front of you angry and frustrated, and all the students can think is like, oh, here we go again, the gays being gays being emotional, gays being over the top. And I just walked through that crowd. My friend just came and hugged me because she could see me crying. She hugged me. We joined the protest. I remember one of the sisters from my mission. I hadn't seen her like in a long time. Honestly, I didn't hang out with her. And she just came up and she's like, what's the goal here? Like, what's your goal with protesting this? And I was like, equality. And she was like, okay, but what does that look like? And I was like, it looks like us not having to protest whether we can hold hands or date someone on campus. It's exactly what you agreed to. We're not going to have sex, but at least we can like be with each other. Because that was the other thing. I feel like before that, people had been like, people had dealt with like the honor code office contacting them because they like had held hands with someone of the same gender, and their roommate reported them anonymously, right? So suddenly they're dealing with, oh, we heard from someone, we're not allowed to tell you who, saying that you are being gay. In what way? You held hands? Oh, is that bad? No, but we were just making sure that you're not gay. And it's like...
Not acting gay.
Not acting gay, yeah.
Too gay, not acting too
not
gay.
acting too, yeah, not acting too gay. It's so stupid. And so, yeah, and that's the other thing. I also knew, like, again, no one, like, really close, but people had been expelled. Friends of friends had been expelled for being homosexual in some way, shape, or form. You know, they did stuff. And so it was just really frustrating. And in that moment, I was like so angry. I did a vibe check, BYU. It got like 250,000 likes over 1 million views. And I was like, I'm going to expose BYU. I'm done with BYU. I hate BYU. This is bad. And I'm going to use everything in my power as like a prominent TikToker right now to try and take this narrative further than just like where it's at. Problem was that was the same week we went into lockdown. So we're protesting. New York Times gets a hold of the story. Everyone's like being interviewed. All of us queer students are doing stuff. The why. There's a guy on Twitter called the Mormon Informant. He contacts me and is like, hey, I have all these lights in rainbow colors. We're going to light the why because they can't do anything about it because we're not actually vandalizing anything. We're just lighting up the Y the same way they light up the Y. But this time we'll do it in rainbow colors. And I was like, period. Pooh. We'll light up the Y in rainbow colors. That'll be so awesome. But again, lockdown. We keep trying to come back to it. And eventually, the Light the Y became part of the Color the Campus movement. And I loved that just because it felt like a more positive energy than just like anything. But it felt like it kind of like undermined, or just like the fire burning within me just like was completely extinguished. And I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't put it anyway. I couldn't like do anything because, rightfully so, the pandemic took all the news space and had become the topic of conversation. And so there was like nothing we could really do as queer students at BYU because the conversation had ended at that point. There was more important things and more important problems to focus on. But it was still a problem, right?
Really quickly, what's a vibe check?
Oh, I do videos where I pretend to be a council of people who vibe check people and tell people if what they're doing is a vibe or not. So that was part of my comedy. And I use that for other reasons, but I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it to BYU for being homophobic. And so, yeah, that spring semester, I had, honestly, in and amongst all that time, I had started dating a guy. A guy would come out, like we'd just like hang out. And we spent lockdown. I kissed him while I was at BYU. And on my second date, I was like, fuck it. I hate BYU. I'm going to have sex with this guy. And I didn't have sex. We just we definitely were naked, which was fun. But I remember cuddling with him. And I remember thinking, this feels so amazing. Like, I was like, this feels beautiful. Like, I feel so good. How can anyone tell me that this is bad? And in that moment, I was like, I remember I had taken off my garments. I had one pair of underwear before this whole experience. I was like, I'm still going to respect the garment. I want to be respectful to my covenants. But I'm going to have sex afterwards. I took off my garments and I told my sisters, like, hey, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to buy some more underwear and I think I'm just going to be gay. And they were like, okay. Which is what they always wanted. They were like, you just need to be gay. But they were like, just wait till you're done with BYU. And I was like, nope, I'm going to do it now because we're in the pandemic and who's going to find out? Anyway, started having sex with this guy. It was wonderful. But I also had a breakup with him in that spring semester. Not a breakup, but like it was my first time like having someone be like, yeah, this is a breakup. And it was my first heartbreak. But I had also experimented with edibles. So I have a depressive episode, I'm not even joking, a mental breakdown. Because I don't know how to process it. I can't tell anyone. I don't know who to tell. I'm stuck in my house. I feel like I love my siblings, but at that point they weren't the same as they are now, right? Like I couldn't be honest with them, or at least I felt that way, right? Like I was like, they're going to judge me because they had judged me. I had a couple hickeys on my neck from the first time, and they were like, oh, Daniel, that's not good. Dan, don't do that. Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, I have a mental breakdown, and I end up in hospital, and they're like, what's the problem? And I was like, I smoke weed. Oh, not smoke weed. I eat weed. And they're like, oh, it's the weed then. The weed is making you like suicidal and depressed. And I was like, I can't even tell people that I'm still gay. And so I still was like living a lie in a lot of ways. And so for the first moment in my life, it was the first moment in my life where I was like, I need to find myself and I need to figure out who I am as a person. And I spent all of lockdown very, very angry and depressed because I couldn't find a new community. I couldn't go out and find new friends. I couldn't find people to talk to about this stuff. And I couldn't afford therapy at the time. So I was just kind of stuck in my house being angry. And I moved into a house with a whole bunch of guys who were wonderful. They were great. But they were all... they had all just left the church too, but they had been watching this podcast called Mormon Stories, and they had been reading a whole bunch of church history, and they'd been watching Zelph on the Shelf and subscribing to their Patreon, and they all kind of just helped me process all the weirdnesses with the church. Shout out to Ethan Bliss. Ethan, I know you're probably listening to this. Ethan Bliss was so wonderful in just like how he helped me gauge where I was at faith-wise, because I had suddenly I had lost my community. I felt like my meme account got deleted in the BLM moment, and that was kind of around the same time. So I wasn't like a Mormon meme anymore, and I wasn't a Mormon content creator. I was still a comedian, and I still had my TikTok, which had always been a good thing for me to just kind of let out my queerness in general. But
you weren't at BYU anymore.
I wasn't at BYU anymore. I was also worried because I was like, I just dropped out of school because I hate the school. So what am I going to do now? Like, what does my life look like now that I don't have BYU anymore? Am I going to be a comedian when you can't go on stage during the pandemic? Like, there were so many questions I had, and suddenly I was confronted with just identity, like who I was, what I was going to do with my life, who am I as a person? And in that house, I did a lot of experimentation. I remember I tried everything under the sun except for coffee. And I remember standing outside of Peace on Earth Coffee. Shout out to Peace on Earth Coffee, a very queer place in Provo. I feel like that's where all of my queer dates have happened. Or at least my first few gay dates. And I remember going to Peace on Earth and not knowing how to order coffee. I didn't know what was good. So I was just like, I'll just have a coffee. And they were like just black coffee. And I was like, black coffee. Yeah, that sounds great. I'll just put some sugar in it. I put like 1 packet of sugar and was like, a large coffee like this. Started drinking. I was like, this tastes like burnt popcorn. I don't like this. And now I know how to order coffee. And
it's lattes, all about the lattes.
Yes. Oh yeah. And so it's been this weird like learning moment for me where I spent the last 2 years not really knowing who I was or what I wanted to do with my life, if I was still going to be a comedian. And I took a huge break from social media because I feel like my anger was kind of coming out on social media. And I felt bad for my non-Mormon audience because I was like, I'm struggling. I don't know what I'm doing, right? Like, I don't know who I am. And I don't want people feeling bad for me because of that. I don't want to like depress anyone else with that. And I felt like I was doing that. And then I realized that I have a huge support system outside of myself, right? There are people. I made friends with a few gay guys over the pandemic, and once the pandemic started slowing down, we started expanding our friend group, and we started meeting other gay guys. And so that's been beautiful. I've made friends with tons of gay guys now, which is wonderful. I went to my first Pride parade, and slowly, as I've been actually like accepting myself, I feel like I've become more confident in what I want to do, who I am. I started making videos again. I started doing comedy again, and doing comedy the way I wanted to do it, talking about the stuff that I wanted to talk about, asking the questions that I want to ask, and actually going to Mormon spaces and saying, what should we talk about? Because there are things that you need to address that we need to talk about. And so my goal now with my like comedy career and like what I'm writing, my friend Adam Browd, he runs you mentioned it earlier, Comedy Church. He started doing that, and I managed to film a special with him there, which was wonderful. But we wrote this whole BYU script, this pilot series, and it was very like therapeutic for me at least, because we wrote about what it was like to be a queer Mormon for the first time at BYU, and suddenly I was addressing all the things that I've been thinking and feeling and experienced at BYU while I was there in secret. You know, all the weirdnesses of just going out in secret and like meeting up with random dudes who would be like, they had their scriptures out when you went to the hookup and stuff like that, right? Like such weird stuff happening. And those moments were like so beautiful, and that was over the pandemic. And it was just a wonderful moment to kind of say like, oh, I can do this. I can be a comedian and still be Mormon and have that be a part of my narrative, but not have to do it in a way that it feels angry or depressed, but feels motivated in wanting it to change and be more respectful and thoughtful and caring of the people that they have raised up. Because that's the other thing, is I don't think I'll stop. I in the same way that Mormons always claim it, because this is the other thing. Mormons will claim other Mormons till the day they die. It doesn't matter if they've left the church or not. People still are like, Ryan Gosling is Mormon, right? Oh, Christina Aguilera is Mormon. Like, I feel like I grew up with all those narratives. And it's like, no, those people are done with the church, though. And they're like, no, but they're still Mormon. So it's like, okay, but if I'm going to be Mormon and you're going to claim me as Mormon at one point, I don't think they will now, because they're like, that one's gay. We don't want that one. But if that's going to be the case, I want my narrative to be, honestly, something of, or at least the narrative to be, this guy came into our lives and he's telling the story the way it's supposed to be told, and it's accurate. It's not sugar-coated, and it's not missing parts. He is telling the story how it's been told, how it's supposed to be told. And I put that in my stand-up, I put that in my script writing. I am still, or at least still have Mormon in me, and I think that that's the motivation. It's like, there are parts of all of us that we need to talk about, that we all need to share, that we don't get out. And if we shared more about ourselves and who we are as people, but particularly members of the church, I think the church would be a lot better of a place, right? Like, if my parents could be as honest with everyone else as they are with me, I'm pretty sure that it would be a beautiful and wonderful experience to just say, like, hey, the older generation, even though you're older, talk about your emotions and feelings. My generation, my siblings, I'm pretty sure that if they could be like, hey, why aren't gay people allowed to, like, actually be a part of our communities, we'd be a lot better off as a community, right? I don't identify as Mormon anymore, but I know that it's in my history, and I know that I have, like, that narrative to tell. And so I want members of the church, if they're listening to this, to know that I care about you and I love you. And the only reason that I do the things that I do is so that you can make the church a better place, right? Make it better, because it needs to be. It doesn't need to be this, like, oppressive, crazy, weird, honestly, like, ignorant place. It needs to be loving and Christ-like and beautiful, and it needs to be as beautiful as you think it is. And the only thing I'd say to that is just make it that way. So yeah, I think that's my Mormon story.
You wish we were done. No, we've got a few more minutes. No, that's beautiful. So really quickly, so one of the things I love about comedians, and I grew up with my parents watching the Smothers Brothers. Yeah. I grew up watching the first seasons of Saturday Night Live with John Belushi and Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray and Steve Martin and Gilda Radner and Jane Curtin and all those, Garrett Morrison. So I've been a fan of comedy, but I've met a lot of comedians. Bent Washburn was a comedian I interviewed on Mormon Stories. Another guy named Mike Grover I've had on Mormon Stories. Just, I found comedians to be highly intelligent, because comedy is hard work. It's hard to be funny.
Yeah.
So generally speaking, I just have to say I've found comedians to be very intelligent, but it's such a powerful and dangerous vehicle because it's fun.
Yeah.
And it's so, I envy funny people because they get to say stuff and they get to have an impact that serious people don't get to say or can't.
Yeah.
And so that's why I just have to, it's just me paying homage to a comedian because I really respect the craft.
Yeah.
Like I watch Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, Marvelous
Mrs.
Maisel.
Yeah.
I'm into comics. So anyway, bless you for that.
Thank you.
Does Kara count as a comic? Do we get to count? Do you and Tanner? Do you guys count?
Tanner just did his first
stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Tanner just did his first set.
Tanner does stand up as well.
Yeah.
You two. So you two, Sam. You two, Tanner.
I write stand up and never perform it.
Yeah. Okay,
If
but
you
one
can
day.
help me with that.
Yeah.
Anyway, thumbs up to comics. I met. Is it Tracy? From Studio C or
Stacy.
Stacy
Hockey. Yeah.
Is he a comedian?
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. I met him just for the first time this weekend. So.
Yeah. Oh, really?
That's anyway, shout out to Mormon Comics. Mormon or post-Mormon comics. Really quickly, normally, and we can like do 2 minutes on this, but normally I have people just talk about like the historical or the truth claim stuff that really took them out, because there's the emotional processing, there's the social justice processing, there's like, this is killing me or this isn't working for me. But oftentimes you still need to do the intellectual processing of like, what about the Book of Mormon? What about Joseph Smith? What about priesthood authority? What about the One True Church?
Yeah.
What about those spiritual experiences I had when I flipped to the right page just in time? And, you know, and that healing, wait, the healing wasn't a good example. But anyway, you get my point. Talk us through in a couple minutes your intellectual deconstruction of what were the things that were most troublesome to you or confirming of your decision that maybe for you the church wasn't what you thought.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm gay, so that was always just like an immediate one that sticks out. I did, you know, in that house that I was talking about with Ethan and all the other guys, we never, you know, for a lot of them, I always thought it was funny that for them they kind of needed a lot of the other info. And it wasn't necessarily they needed it. It's just like they had all this other info that they needed to like make sure it wasn't. For me, it was just like, no, I'm gay, and I don't like how the church doesn't address certain things, particularly like even during BLM and all this other stuff.
But I had Gary and Ernie on last week. Margie and I interviewed Gary and Ernie.
Yay.
That'll be an interview we release soon. But like when Ernie's Mormon wife ended up leaving him and taking the kids, he ended up having a Mormon boyfriend. They were boyfriends for 9 years or something like that.
Yeah.
And his boyfriend stayed a believer the whole time. In fact, Ernie left Mark because Mark still believed 9 years later as an adult gay man living with another, you know what I mean? So, So I guess I'm just saying being gay and Mormon doesn't necessarily mean, in fact, we've still got Charlie Bird and Ben Schlatti and like.
Yeah. Well, that's what I will say. Like, I think I am, I definitely can't like be like lump it all together. That I will just say like that was my main motivation. I think
that was the trigger.
Yeah, that was like the trigger of just like I'm done. That being said, it was interesting because, and this is why Ethan was so prominent. Ethan had done all of like the research. Like Ethan was essentially my CES letter. He was the CES letter. He told me all of the CES letter basically. He was just like, we would sit around campfires because we just do that at our house. We just had like little fires. Because we're bored. And so we would sit around fires and we just laugh and talk about stuff, but it would always come back to the church, and he would like teach us all of these interesting like things. And so I think it was
Give us 5 examples of like things you remember, if you can. Does that put you on the spot?
Yeah. Sorry.
I do need
to 5 things. Okay, so
5 of the biggest
one,
ones.
Church history stuff. He went into Joseph Smith with all the young women, all the young girls, particularly, what's her name? And
Fanny Alger or
Fanny Alger.
Helen Mar Kimball. 14-year-old girls.
Fanny Alger, and went into like the accounts where Emma was like kicking out Joseph from the house. And he was like, no, I'm not going to say like we know for certain what she was kicking him out for, but it felt like stuff was going down. And so again, I can't like pinpoint, but one, Joseph Smith marrying younger girls, Brigham Young straight out the gate, most of Brigham Young. Like I was like,
bad guy,
bad person, don't fuck with them, period. What is it? The hieroglyphs.
Book of Abraham.
The whole Book of Abraham. I was like, what is happening? He showed me the Dead Sea Scrolls and like made the comparison. I was like, hey,
Egyptian papyrus.
Hey, here's like the regular papyrus. Here's the stuff. And I was like, this is bad. And he was like, yeah, that's why the church is distancing themselves. And I was like, that's not true. That's a bad thing. Why are people not looking at this? I was like, I remember messaging my family and being like, you guys know this? And they were like, Daniel, don't show us anti-Mormon stuff. And I was like, okay, well, I guess I can't have that conversation, but like, it feels like important enough to know.
Yeah. That was my first big issue.
Yeah. That's a wild one.
And the weird thing is there's gospel topics essays now, like you said, on your mission that'll tell the whole story of the Book of Abraham. And then people like your parents maybe won't even read it.
No.
Even though it's authored by the church now.
Yes, yeah.
It's still
and it's like he said he translated it.
Yeah.
He
said that.
That was a mind-boggling one.
Yeah.
Like I was like, this is bad. Like, how do they not know this?
Book of
Loving
Mormon?
Ethan, by the way.
Book of Mormon less so. I always kind of like, again, my attachment to the Book of Mormon is very distant.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of, when Ethan delved into all of the wives, like plural marriage in general, polygamy, and just like how bad it was. And I was like, this is sorry. I also don't want, I just said this whole thing about like Mormons and I don't want to disrespect, but I was like, this was a sex cult.
Yeah.
Like it was for sure a sex cult. And then he went into the history of how like Joseph would send off people on missions and would be like, take their wives. And suddenly I was like, it is insane that he had like, what was it, 14 wives in secret before Emma knew about all this
Over
stuff?
20. Emma was like the 22nd wife married to Joseph.
What?
Even though DNC 132 says
I'm just like,
even
well,
though DNC 132 says that the first wife needs to approve
Consent.
subsequent wives, Emma was like
It's
the
like we get
22nd.
yeah.
this amount of info from God about it. And he doesn't stick to any of it.
He
Yeah.
told me about it, and then I read the CES letter, and I was like, this is wild. And then I'll just go back to the CES letter, like the whole thing. Like all of the points made in the CES letter
Yeah.
were so prominent that I was just like, it's absolutely insane that they wouldn't like try to address any of these points, and that people were so angry about stuff. Because that was the other thing. I did have bishops, when I told them I was gay, that they were like, you're having a testimony problem. And I was like, I can't even imagine what it was like for the guy, what's his name? The guy who wrote the CES letter.
It's Jeremy Reynolds.
Yeah, Jeremy Reynolds, to go through what he went through and to have like actual historical points and be like, you can't answer anything. You are the CES, right?
Director,
Church,
yeah.
you can't, you are part of the church education system. You can't answer anything.
Yeah.
That must have been so frustrating and so wild, because my stuff, I feel like, comes from an emotional place, right? Gay, why don't we like take more of a stance on this? Why don't we do this stuff? But then the history, when you actually delve into it, it was funny because Ethan would bring in people. I had all these friends come in, and we'd sit around, and Ethan would just like teach us, and he like led a group of people away from the church. Like my friends would come into the house, and he'd be like, yeah, because he was very chill. Ethan like just like talks like this, and he's like, how's it going? You're really cool. Hey, have you heard about the CES letter? And these people did not know what was coming for them. I remember one girl had like a full-on faith crisis in our basement. It was like, the church isn't true. What is happening? And so like that was like prominent moments in our like,
Yeah.
in my life that like were just, again, testimonies, but also watching people leave the church and be happier. I'd say is even the biggest one. Mm-hmm. That one's the best, is just watching people still be good and well off when they leave the church. And it's like, because that was one thing that I think a lot of people claimed for me. They were like, the reason that you're seeing success online is because you've left the church. So Satan, when I was doing well on the online, when people thought I was a member, they were like, God's blessing you. And I was like, okay, but I'm not a good member right now. I am terrible, actually. I'm not going to church. They didn't know that, but they were like, God's blessing you. As soon as I left the church, people were like, Satan. It's Satan giving him all the power so he can undo all of the good that God's done. And it's like, no, you don't get to change the narrative. You don't get to tell me the reason John Dehlin is so successful with his podcast is because Satan wants God to undo the church.
I
And
wish
it's like,
Satan would help me out.
yeah, but that's the other thing, is like, Satan isn't doing enough.
Yeah,
I need some
seriously,
more
you
help,
could try
Satan.
harder.
Like, yeah, please. It's just so weird to me that like people get to change that narrative so frequently. So, you know, a lot of the historical stuff, but mainly just watching people be good and accept themselves and love themselves has been such a beautiful moment for me.
And not want to die.
And not want to die. Oh, funny how that works, hey?
Well, we've got like 5 minutes, and there's so much more I would want to talk to you about. But really quickly, what are your career ambitions? Like, what is your dream for your comedy? Do you have some dreams?
I do have some dreams.
Go spend a minute or two on your dreams.
I have a lot of dreams. Okay, so one is I want to get big enough to make my own content in terms of I want to make movies and TV shows. I told you a little bit about the script that I wrote. I think that would be wonderful. It's called Less Actives. Wonderful. I have a superhero movie, like plot line. It's all mapped out. I do a whole like spiel for it. It's wonderful. It's called Fatty Boom Boom. And it's all about fat superheroes because, fun fact about me, I just lost 60 pounds. So I've lost 60 pounds since January. I was 300 pounds and I was like, oh, I need 310 pounds actually. I need to lose some weight. And
like high level, how'd you do it? If you want to share.
Yeah, I just honestly, I think I was mapping out like a lot of like my macros and micro stuff and calories and stuff. But it was just like a lot of weightlifting with my friend, my roommate, Peter. He's been great with that. He helped me like do a meal plan, and then we ran. Recently, I've been like less focused on that. I've just been like, I kind of like the weight that I'm at right now. I feel very healthy, feel very like good about myself. But I do think the next phase is to see how flat my stomach can get. I think that'd be so fun to just get a V going. Because I'm not necessarily motivated by like, I think I should look this particular way. I think it's just like healthy for me. I started hiking. My next stand-up, we're talking about goals. My next stand-up or lineup of stand-up that I've started writing is all about my firsts. I'm planning out an hour for a special about all of the firsts that I've had because I was either in the closet, I was Mormon, or I was fat. And all of those like play a role in not experiencing the world for the first time. And so I talk about like what it's like to do yoga for the first time, what it's like to go on hikes for the first time, and what it's like to do like acid and mushrooms for the first time. Like stuff like that is so like weird, but it's all things I'm experiencing at 28 years old that I feel like only a 28-year-old Mormon guy can talk about, right? So,
dude, you're going to be Mormon Hannah Gatsby.
I hope so. That would be so fun. I love Hannah Gatsby. So yeah, it's just been it's.
I think Netflix is gonna have a 1 hour special.
Yeah, I don't see it not happening for you.
It would be so exciting to have just an hour long special.
Are we manifesting, Sam? Do we believe in manifesting?
It's like it's already done. You know,
it's
just
done?
we're just on the timeline that we're on.
Okay,
it's gonna happen.
There will be a Daniel Spencer
special,
Netflix special.
Yes,
minimum.
Well, at least one.
So, yeah, and then final goal: retire to the forest with all the money I make from my Netflix special. And
back in Zimbabwe?
No, I think it'll probably be in Oregon.
Oregon.
Yeah, I love Oregon so much.
Different forest.
That or I'll just go to the Caribbean. One of the two. I have to pick which one. I just love the forest so much, though.
Love it. Okay, really quickly, this has been so amazing. I could spend another 3 hours, but I have a meeting, I feel bad about that. Plug everything you want to plug, and then Sam, I'm going to have you plug. So get ready.
Okay, cool. Follow DanBanBam. It's DanBanBam on all social media. I am currently working, as I said, on all of my comedy specials and on all of my comedy shows. If you want to come watch me, I'm mainly performing in Utah right now. So follow my social media for any updates on that.
Do you go to Wise Guys and perform?
I do
like
occasionally.
Yeah.
I have not been performing at Wise Guys recently, but
you travel around the country and perform in clubs?
I've been touring. That's my main thing.
In clubs?
In clubs, yeah. I've been
fun.
touring with another TikToker named Ben Brainerd. So if I remember correctly, we're doing a set of shows, I think in Florida in November. If you happen to be in Florida, come check me out. I am also doing just a ton of writing and a ton of content creation. So watch my videos, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Daniel Spencer. And then I'm actually only just doing my Patreon this week. So my Patreon will probably be up by the time this comes out. So if you want to support me on Patreon, come through. We're creating content on BYU campus. We're creating content off BYU campus. I also have songs out on Spotify. So just look up DanBanBam on Spotify. And watch me as I create a weird and wild comedy special that includes EDM, rave culture, and my Mormon roots. So that's all my plugs. Sam?
And do you serve?
Oh, I serve. I serve, baby.
You do.
And Sam, I'll ask you again. Do you serve?
I don't think I serve, but I get 2 drinks in me.
Okay. All right, plug away, Sam. Come on.
It's so embarrassing to plug myself after Dan, but I'm on, Zelph on the Shelf. We have YouTube. That's our primary platform. We're on TikTok, Twitter, everywhere. On our Patreon, we are reading the sequels to Charlie. You know Charlie, the beloved Mormon movie. And then I'm everywhere on social media at the Samspo. I also do have some music on Spotify and would love to make more soon. Or I'm in the process of it.
On Spotify?
Samantha Shelley.
EY, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you are a transition
and I do
coach.
faith transitions coaching, and my website is samanthashelleycoaching.com.
And you help what types of people?
You know, any type of people really, but primarily people who are going through faith relationship transitions, people who want to navigate that with self-love, you know, people who value autonomy over codependency, people who value living a joyful life that is built on their truest desires rather than kind of what we're taught we should want to do with our lives. It's kind of my general ethos.
And you value Stanley beverage containers. Is that right?
Yeah, and Diana Ribera gave me the Stanley Cup and it's changed my life. So thank you, Diana. I think about you every day as I drink out of it. Not every time, but once a day at least.
All right. Well, Samantha, thank you for making this happen. Samantha, I've had a busy couple months, but Samantha was like, you, John, I will not stop
I will not rest.
bugging you. I will not stop
funnier.
resting until we interview Daniel. And you were right. Daniel's lovely, brilliant, and someday he's going to be super famous. And we knew him when.
Already is.
We knew him when.
Yeah, we did.
Well, I mean, he is super famous. Who's got 1.7 million? But
also, we did a video with Dan on Zelph on the Shelf.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
Go
fun.
check that out.
Yeah.
I think I remember that. Okay. Well, Daniel, you're lovely.
Thank you.
You're brilliant. I'm so happy. So many people lose a ton of weight after leaving Mormonism. It's like the post-Mormon diet or something.
Yeah, funny how like
it's a thing.
you feel healthier afterwards. Loving and accepting yourself looks like this.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, good luck with everything. Thank you for being vulnerable and open and honest and brilliant. And I can't wait to follow your stuff and to see your Netflix special.
Hey, thanks, John, and thank you for having me, guys. This is wonderful.
Yeah.
I've been watching you guys for ages, so
Yeah.
it's great.
And thanks again, Sam.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us on Mormon Stories. Thanks to the Open Stories board, to the Mormon Stories staff, everyone who makes all this possible. Mostly thanks to the donors that make Mormon Stories possible. We couldn't do it without you. If you are a supporter, thank you. If you're not a donor, you can always go to mormonstories.org, click on the donate button, become a monthly donor. And we'll keep creating this content and having amazing guests like today in perpetuity until the support dries up. So please support us if you can. Most importantly, be kind to each other, love each other, be good to each other, build bridges, try and be compassionate and empathetic. What the world needs is more empathy, less heat, and more light, if you can. And of course, if you want to, we just passed 70,000 subscribers on YouTube. For us, is a big deal. But follow us on, if you can, subscribe to us on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, even though we don't really do anything there. But if you have feedback, email us at mormonstories@gmail.com, comment on YouTube or on the Mormon Stories channel or on Facebook. And share these episodes with whoever you think might value. I hope BYU students will watch this, especially LGBT BYU students, because they deserve love and happiness and joy, and they deserve to lose 80 pounds as well. So
if they want to.
If they want to. And if they don't, then gain 80 pounds. Whatever works for you.
Oh, yeah.
Do whatever's healthy, right? All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care. Love you. And we'll see you all again soon on another episode of Mormon Stories Podcast. Bye-bye.